Yo, Kipis Guy here. Hey, welcome back to the channel. The review you've been waiting for, the Perlisten R5M monitor reviews. You got your left, my right. Here's one to my left, your right. I have had these in the house for, I guess it's a month now, and I've been trying my best to listen to everything. And I'm going to go out and say this right now. I will not be comparing anything to my Monitor 8s, my Arundel Monitor 8s in this video. I'm not going to say anything about them. I'm saving it for the showcase video, the head-to-head show out between the two. So watch that video after this one is done. I want to talk about these monitor speakers for what they are. So they come in just over $6,000 a pair. They are sitting on their stands that you can buy for about $1,500 bucks, a little bit less than that. The matching stands that go with it. They put them at a good level, at an ear level for you, which is funny. The stands, they have a slight tilt downwards towards you, which is interesting because at least with my seating, these speakers sit below my ear level, and it's even more accented because the speaker slightly leans forward. Or you can turn the stand around and have them slightly lean up, but you can't have them straight. And for me, I think turning them around and having the stands tilt them up is better because my seat is a little bit higher than them when I'm sitting in it. And it makes a huge difference if these tweeters are pointed at you or just past you. Makes a huge difference. We'll talk about that here in just a few. If you haven't seen the overview video, the unboxing overview video, I talked about the materials, the technology behind it, the build quality. I talked about all that, so watch that previous video. I won't be doing any of that in this. This is going to be strictly about how they sound. So first thing I want to do, it kind of went off the screen here, but I'm going to pop up some measurements that I got. I did some near field measurements of this speaker here. Then I did some in-room response measurements in my seat. And then I did some compression tests. So let's switch over to the screen so you guys can take a look at the results. So what I'm showing you here right now are the near field measurements here in red. This was just of the right speaker. They're pretty identical to each other. The room's symmetrical. It doesn't really matter which speaker I measure, but this is the right speaker near field. So without the room involved too much. And it is a very good spot, a very good graph. Yes, there is some smoothing to make it look better. I can take it all away and it looks a lot like, oh, it didn't do it at all. Let me click on it. Graph, remove smoothing. There you go. It's a very smooth line. I'll add a 1/6 smoothing on here or even a 1/12 smoothing on here. It's actually a very smooth looking graph. And this is near field. So from the speaker itself, from the front baffle, everything is pretty linear. Everything is in balance, which is great. You have two 6.5-inch drivers, 1-inch tweeter. I mean, it's very balanced sound, and it does portray in the room mostly. We'll get to that in a second. After I did near field measurements, I did move to one speaker. This is still the right speaker, but this is in my seat. So yes, obviously the dBs have lowered because we're further away from the speaker, but overall the response has stayed the same. Again, this is still a 1/6 smoothing, I believe. Let me just make sure we're consistent with that. We are, oh, I think I took it away. There we go. We are 1/6 smoothing on this as well. So again, we even in my listening position, we have a pretty good response. Now this is no room correction. This is Anthem room correction turn off. This is just the speaker and my UMic 1, and that's it. No other factors in here. And again, this is a very well measuring speaker, very balanced speaker. This is a response from 20 hertz up to 20 kilohertz. So I went ahead and measured both speakers on both left and right. And that's what this looks like in comparison to just near field. And again, very smooth. It's very tasteful. It comes through. And a speaker like this, that measures like this, it means it's a speaker that can play music incredibly well and replicate movies very well as well. So a speaker that I'm very proud of. This honestly performs very well. The graph is a really clean graph. I'm going to get the red one away. This is both speakers in my room with no calibration, no subwoofers whatsoever, from 20 hertz up to 20 kilohertz. We are a very respectable response. Hats off to Perlisten for making a speaker that performs very well with literally all genres of music except one, but we'll get to that. So after my near field and in-room response measurements, I did compression testing. So I started off with just negative 20 dB. Let me blow this graph up. What do you think? Let's move this over and let's make it, we can make it a little bit bigger, can't we? Let's click it. So this is from 80 hertz to 500 hertz. The reason why I chose this is because Perlisten says that this speaker can reach about 113 dBs in-room response, RMS. It can play very loud. It's THX certified. It can play very, very loud, but it only can do it from 80 hertz on upwards. So I didn't even bother measuring under 80 hertz. I wanted to see if their claims were true. And this is at negative 20 decibels in stereo mode on the Anthem Avium 70. So not bad. I think I can make it just a little bit bigger for you guys and then move it down just a little bit. There we go. Move it over. So that is negative 20 dB. Then I went up 5 dBs on the volume knob to negative 15 dB, and we stayed pretty good. We didn't run to any compression. I didn't expect it to. We're not near reference or anything like that. So we did another 10 dB to, or excuse me, 5 dB to negative 10. Let me move the graph for you. And again, we're getting loud. I mean, we're up there in volume level. We're plus 105 decibels where my mic is set up. This is in-room response, by the way. So very loud, no compression issues. But then I decided, let's just go 3 dBs instead of a full 5 dB. Let's go up 3 more dBs. And then we started to run to some compression. Let me get this to be consistent with the rest of the graph. 1/6 and kablam. Now we are getting a little bit of compression here towards the 140, 150. So I stopped here. I didn't do past negative 7, but that is a very minute difference here. It could probably go a little bit louder on average. I'd say I would be easily able to reach reference volume with these speakers without worrying about them. And yes, there will be some compression depending on what you're listening to, but this was loud. So this is way higher than what I would turn. I wouldn't turn it up much past negative 20 dB, let alone negative 7, which is what the very top line is. So this capable speaker is definitely what they say it could do. It definitely plays in the 110, 115 dB range with no issues before running into compression. I don't have any problems listening to this loud without having issues with the speaker running into the compression, distortion of some sort. So really good measurements on the graph here. But I want to talk about the sound. Before I do that, I want to go back and click on the in-room response. This graph here, I'm going to lower it down. So like we said, this graph here is very respectable. It's very smooth. There's not a lot of issues with it. It sounds good, right? I'm going to tell you why this graph does not depict what you hear. I know a lot of people really like measurements, and measurements tell a lot about a speaker, but it doesn't tell you how it sounds. And this graph will make you think, oh wow, these speakers are pretty linear, pretty smooth. They're not too peaky. They don't favor the high end or the low end or the mid range. They are very they're not one notey. They're very versatile. That's what this graph tells you. But I'm going to tell you right now that is not the truth when it comes to actual in-room real world listening. Let me jump on camera and explain what I'm talking about. So obviously this graph here is really good for a speaker with no calibration, just my room, just my acoustic treatment, and just my placement. It looks very respectable. But this graph is kind of misleading because when I'm listening to the speakers, the first 10, 15 minutes that I ever plugged these speakers in, I did not like them. Literally, when I first unboxed them, I put them in their sections and I listened to them. I did not like them. And the reason was because I felt like there was a bad bass to treble ratio. It just felt like there was no bass and a whole bunch of tweeter and a whole bunch of high register, to the point where I was like, I don't like these at all. They sound flat. They're not flat as in there's no bass or whatever, but flat as in there's no pizzazz or character. There's no, I don't know. They didn't make me go like, whoa, right out of the gate. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. These speakers are definitely more for the music audiophile. They do well for movies. I won't spend too much talking about movies because a movie is subjective. Depending on how it's recorded, it doesn't matter. But music, these speakers are more for those people who are going to use these probably 70% music, 30% home theater, or just completely music. I think that's what these speakers are oriented towards. But for me, when I started listening to music, I just did not like it. No matter what I listened to, nothing was impressive. The only thing that was impressive was the vocals. The vocals were definitely an instant hit for me. These speakers are not big. These are actually almost bookshelf size, more than they are monitors to me. And they still give you one of the most grandest sound stage that I've really ever heard. And not just a giant wall of sound, but even a little bit of wrapping around you. It's almost like what comes out of it hugs you. If you can kind of get that visualization, when you're listening to the speakers, the music just kind of wraps you in, right? It's not everything, it mostly is in front of you, but if you have them set up correctly and you sit yourself in the right position and you put these the right ear level and you toe them in the correct way, the sound will wrap you. It will hug you, and it keeps the voices here. These are the best off-axis speakers that I've ever listened to. I intentionally sat in the wrong seat way off to the right just to hear what it would sound like, and the voices still stayed here to the point where I turned around and looked at my AVM 70 to make sure it was in stereo mode. It indeed is in stereo mode, but the ability to keep the voices focused in the middle is an absolute treat to listen to, and it has to be due to what they have going on right here in the middle. This is what the first thing that attracts you is kind of how weird the speaker looks, maybe even ugly. The second thing that attracts you is what's going on in here, because there's not another speaker that looks like this that's doing this kind of technology, and it does make a difference. The next thing I want to talk about is the mid-range bass. The most impressive thing about these speakers is the mid bass, and I'm talking about punchy. You can feel, at least I have wooden floors, so I'll put an asterisk next to what I'm gonna say. This might be just for me, but I can feel the mid bass presence not only in the floor, I can hear it right on the walls, but you can feel it kick in your chest. If you're looking to pop rock, heavy metal, anything like that, anything with a heavy kick drum or whatever, even a snare drum, you can really feel it in your body at the right volumes, which is impressive because there's no compression, there's no fatigue, there's no distortion. It's loud, but it's under control. And it really makes you go like, holy crap, because there is so much mid bass out of the speaker that it is borderline insane. It's actually almost too much. Why I say that is because there is little to no bass, and this is where I go back to this graph. This graph is relatively smooth, and it's pretty good down to about 40 hertz before we have a quick roll off. But to my ears, it rolls off a lot faster than that. I don't really hear much out of these speakers past 45 or 50 hertz. They're rated down in room to 37 hertz. I don't really hear much past 50 hertz. So I don't know. This graph shows it to be pretty smooth, but really, actually the graph kind of shows this too. Kind of right here between 100 hertz to 400 hertz, it's kind of raised in comparison to everything else. And it sounds that way too. There is so much mid-bass presence in this speaker that you have to be careful with how you set them up because they can sound very boomy. I had to go into my tone controls and turn the bass down because there was too much mid-range presence in here. I never played around with port plugs. I never tried that. I think it would have made the sound worse because I wasn't getting a lot of usable bass under 50 hertz anyway. So to plug them didn't make any sense, but maybe it would have helped my mid-range bass. Probably not. It probably would have made it sound tighter, maybe even more punchier, and I probably wouldn't have liked that because truly, in their ported state, the mid bass is somebody is hammering on your chest. It definitely punches well above its class, 100%. So I'm gonna say that it's a good thing. It can be tamed. If I ran calibration, it probably would have smoothened it out, taken a little bit of it back. But for how they sit, you get a lot of mid-range bass, and it's really impressive. But if you're not careful, you can run yourself into a very boomy, bloated and unaccentuated bass that you're not looking for. So let's go back to the graph and how I told you that this graph is misleading. When it comes to the highs, this speaker plays well into the 20 kilohertz range. You're going to have no problem hearing your T's, hearing your I's, those cymbals, the S's. You're not going to have a problem with tonality. You're not going to have a problem with any of that. But because there's such a weird imbalance in my room with bass and everything else, it can sound bright. Not harsh, but it does sound bright because there's not a lot of low end to go with it. So for me, I didn't turn the treble down, but for example, my Arndal Monitor 8s, I actually have the treble boosted, attenuated about 2 or 3 dB higher. On these, I have it absolutely flat because it's too much. It's not harsh. It's not, or excuse me, it's not fatiguing. It's not harsh, but it can be bright and it can be distracting if you listen and you're like, holy crap, the cymbals are tss, 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 but your bass and your and stuff is not there. It can kind of throw you off a little bit depending on what you're listening to. Again, something that can be corrected with more room correction, with more acoustic treatment, but I don't have any room correction going on. But the speaker's loud, and it's loud from 80 hertz on up. 70 hertz on down, you really start to roll off, and you can kind of see that on the graph after 40 hertz. It's out of there. And depending on what you're listening to, it can sound very weird, almost imbalanced is the word I'm going to use. So let's talk about that bass. There's none of it. I have been listening to them in full range because I had my subs off for the last month. I haven't been listening to any sub bass. I've only been listening to the the R5M monitors. There's no bass. So if you're going to use these for movies, you're going to 100% need an 80 hertz crossover or something of that nature and have your subs on. If you're going to use them for 50-50 music and movies, you can get away with using these speakers for music with no subs if you play the right genre of music. If you are a reggae kind of person, if you are a hip-hop kind of person, even an R&B, modern day R&B kind of person, or something like that that has 40 to 30 hertz in their tracks, you will not like these speakers that much. If you are somebody who listens to pop, pop rock, metal, heavy metal, if you listen to gospel music, if you listen to anything like that, alternative music, you're going to like these speakers a whole lot. Because like I said, they give you a huge sound stage, but the tonality, the linearity, the control, the sheer volume level is unmatched at this price point. And you're going to look at these speakers if you buy them, or maybe you have them, and you probably will agree with me. You're going to look at these speakers and say, man, these they're not that big. There's no way they're going to hit 114 dB or whatever. When you plug them in, you will be pleasantly surprised at how good they are at almost everything. And they do everything way bigger than they are. They don't look great, but man, do they sound pretty freaking good. I think with these speakers being as good as they are, you're going to have to be careful with what room you choose to put them in, and you may want to consider some acoustic treatment. I did put them in a much bigger room than my home theater. My living room is like triple the size of this, but there are zero acoustic treatment in that room. And it's wood floors as well, and primarily bare wall. And this speaker sounds like a $2,000 speaker in there. It sounds like a $10,000 speaker in here despite it being in a small room. But I do think that these speakers would benefit from pulling them off the wall. Yes, the port is underneath. It helps me a lot. And my speakers are not up against this wall, but they are against the side wall here. My room, for reference, if you don't watch the channel much, you should first and foremost. But my room is about 13 feet long, 10 and a half feet wide, just shy of 8 feet ceilings. So it's your average American bedroom. But these speakers, definitely, even with them being small, they actually would still do better in a bigger room. These actually perform worse in this room than my Arndal Monitor 8s that are 2 times the size. It's weird. These speakers would sound better in a room, not necessarily double the size, but not far from it. So maybe a 400 square foot room, 300 square foot room might be better. This is like mid 200s on square feet. So a little bit bigger room would let these grow, let them expand, let them play a little bit better. But they do still sound good even in a room like this. So I'll end this video, I'll close the video with saying the only speakers on the market at anywhere near this price point, give or take a few grand, that can compete with these is maybe the Arndal Monitor 8s. I will leave that for the head-to-head battle. If you don't know, I own the Monitor 8s. So there will be a video on that. I never heard the Arndal Bookshelf 8. Maybe that can compete with these too. We'll have to see if I can get them in for review one day. SVS Titans. You will probably favor the bass. You will favor the bass in the SVS speakers over these, but I think in every other regard, these speakers are better than them. Tonality, linearity, overall soundstage, imaging, presence. These speakers are great. It's not like a blowout, but these take the cake because this going on right here, this mid-range section is unbeatable. The mid-range bass on this performs well over the size, like a dual 8-inch or a dual 10-inch tower speaker. That's how good the mid bass is. It performs like a dual 10-inch tower. It's crazy. But there's not many speakers, if any at all, except maybe one, that can really rival these. And I think it's the Monitor 8s. I think the Monitor 8s have certain strengths that these don't, and these have certain strengths that those don't, but I think the Monitor 8's strength outweigh what these beat them in, if that makes any sense at all. But we'll get to that in a later video. But I have to give a huge thanks to Perlisten for trusting this young man who they never met before to review their speakers, because they are at the mercy of what I have to say. But I don't have anything bad to say. They are world-class speakers. I absolutely love them. And I can imagine what the towers sound like. I do think the towers are probably the better speaker out of the two because of the extra cone area you're going to get. Will give you some more bass. I think they need it. I think that's the only thing that's holding these back from being an absolute 10 out of 10. I think they're a 9 out of 10. I wish there was more usable bass, at least in the room that I have, but that could be different for you. But world-class speakers, they're priced perfectly. They could be a little bit more expensive, and I don't think anybody would argue with them. They are really good speakers for the money. So with that being said, it's time for me to bring the Arundel Monitor 8s back in here and listen to those again, because it's time for me to do the video of which one is a better speaker. So if you haven't seen the videos leading up to this, we compared the Monitor 8s with these size-wise, materials-wise, technology-wise. We've done that all. We talked about specs on these speakers, we talked about specs on the Monitor 8s, and now you guys have just finished watching the R5M review. It's now time to put the Arundels back in here with the R5Ms and see which one actually better speaker. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're not already. Stay tuned, and we will see you in the next video. K-Pace Guy out. Peace.